He's actually the fella whose life story inspired the film The Hurt Locker. Me and Chris Hunter, we were boy soldiers together. We went through basic training and served together. I stayed in for 7 years. That's where I met him. Um, we were good friends from a long while, and then you separate and you go and do different careers. I did 7 years, came out and started working, and he carried on a bit longer. He had a very decorated military service, and then through social media, you get back in touch with people years later. And I've been down and met him a few times in London, and I've talked to him about publishing as well, and looked at doing traditional publishing. And he's although he likes the book and thinks it would do well, he's very strongly advised me to go and not to go traditional publishing because of the financial aspects of the way that industry works.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It is unfortunate. They take a lot. I was just reading about short fiction and whatnot, and how much the publisher will make off of thousands of sales, and the author will make like $50.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
it's
he
kind
gets,
of.
He gets 5% on his books, because you've got your printers, you've got your publishers, then you've got your distributors, then you've got your literary agents, and then you've got your retailers. And by the end of it, he gets 5%. So even when you're selling millions of books, you're still not doing quite as wonderful as you think.
Yeah, you could be doing better if you did all the work yourself.
Absolutely, which is why I've done all the work myself for these.
Now, I'm just curious. I was reading the book, and I think I'm just about done. I mean, it ends so sadly for this family, and
the last bit of it, I think, is very inspiring with how they've used that tragedy to make something incredibly positive at the end.
But this is kind of your life, though, on a daily basis, though, too. I mean, you kind of interact with people at their 100% worst.
Yes.
How does your day job, which, I mean, I guess as
national security, and I try and keep this out of my writing because I don't ever want my books really to be about me.
Well, it's not. I don't think you don't enter the narrative at all, which I think is miraculous. And I mean, it just, without really getting into details, what I do find interesting is you, the authorial voice, the person who's telling this story. You do run up into this kind of situation a lot.
Yeah, and I've got friends who've got the I don't know, burden of having a vet, because they never come across as having a burden. They embrace it and make the most of it very much the same way as the Meredith family did. I'm quite astonished by the parents and how brilliantly they actually take this task and make the most of it in the same way that Livy herself did. But tonight I had a very strange, extraordinary experience. My wife found an 88-year-old man, a stranger that we didn't know. He'd fallen badly on the ice, and he'd got a huge cut on his head, massive egg. He'd broken his arm, and anyway, myself and my youngest daughter, we've taken him to hospital for 3 hours. He hasn't got a friend, he's got no family, he's got not one person in the world, not one person. And because he walks on sticks, he's lost his mobility now because he's broken his arm. And we've sat with him for 3 hours, and he was like having the best night of his life. You can tell he's a fella that sits on his own. But I sat there for 3 hours with him, constantly telling me jokes and his life story, and he tried to forget about the fact that he had blood running down his face and his arm was broken. And he just really enjoyed having company at the hospital. I thought, some people are sitting there moaning because they've missed half of Coronation Street, or the tea wasn't warm, and this guy has probably broken his arm. Well, he has broken his arm. He might have lost his ability to live independently. And he was as happy as anything because he had some company for 3 hours. I think it does change your perspective on things. And Livy, definitely reading her book and her attitude and the way she grabbed life like it was a cookie to be eaten and enjoyed every second and every opportunity that passed in front of her.
What was it like?
What
was it like interacting with Livy?
Well, Libby passed before I met the family.
Oh, okay. I thought you had met her before.
No. I've got a very good friend who I go and watch rugby with each week. And I think I mentioned last time that one day Gemma came home and she had a £590 phone bill for sending 7,500 text messages. And of course, I pulled faces, and for a month we're going to be a bit poor and have a few beans on toast meals. And when I was at rugby the next day with Al, and he's got a daughter who has Rett Syndrome, I just thought, how stupid am I thinking about a phone bill and how trivial it is. Al's got a daughter who'll never send a single text message. She'll never say I love you. She'll never have a boyfriend. She'll never go to university. She'll never do any of those things.
Yeah.
And yet he never complains. He never moans. He won't even roll his eyes. He just takes every day and makes the most of it and never complains. And this is a typical attitude of a lot of Rett parents that makes a lot of us feel quite humbled. And that's what made me embark on a few years of helping out and doing these very long 127-mile walks each year and fundraising to find a cure. Then his time was getting a bit precious because they want to spend time with their daughters rather than training 3 or 4 times a week. So having done a few books, I thought I would try and use that skill to make a book about Rett Syndrome, and there wasn't one that was so brutally detailed and was also informative on the market, which is what I wanted to create. I wanted to create something that people could say, when they're constantly getting people saying, what's Rett Syndrome? They could say, read this, this will tell you. And it doesn't just tell you your symptoms so you can stick a label on it, but it really explains what it's like to live with and understand what the condition and how it affects other people in the family. It also, that same ethos could pass into the medical world because, again, the descriptions and the conditions are accurate, but also it would give you a feeling of how you should be with that child as a patient, because one of the things that's really, really frustrating is about 3% of doctors in the UK and America, who are the most advanced in this field, know what Rett Syndrome is.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tiny fraction, and that's why they take 2, 3, sometimes more years to get a correct diagnosis. I did a poll actually last month in a group on Facebook which has 250,000 doctors, and the poll returned 4% when I questioned, please do not Google, answer yes or no honestly, do you know what Rett Syndrome is? 4% claim to know what it was. And
why is that? Why is it such a small percentage of people recognize this syndrome?
It's a rare disease. It's a very rare disease. It's 1 in 12,000 girls. But that equates to 350,000 around the world.
Yeah, it can be a large number. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So there are 350,000 people suffering with Rett syndrome right now?
Around the entire globe. I think that probably includes some based on statistics and undiagnosed. There's a lot who are in countries where there won't be a doctor who would recognise it. They'll treat it as global learning difficulty, cerebral palsy, a mental illness, and they'll be doped up with drugs and just left to rot, basically.
What is it like to interact with somebody with Rett syndrome? I mean, that was what I was so curious about. I wanted to get a handle on who Livy was.
I know Estelle, who's 16, is another girl who has Rett. It is not brain damage. A girl with Rett, brain works perfectly. It just won't communicate with the body correctly. But they know what they like. They know when they're having a good time. Now, Estelle loves going to watch rugby. She loves the atmosphere. She loves the crowd. She loves watching her mum and dad get excited watching it. And she won't know whether you're winning or losing, or perhaps she does. She can never tell us, but she does know. But she does love being in an area that is, a happy atmosphere. She loves being dressed up to look pretty and that her hair looks nice. That gets her very excited. And of course, she loves food. A lot of them can't actually enjoy food. They have to be gastro-fed as well,
Oh wow.
tube-fed. So Estelle and Livy were both very lucky in that aspect.
That they were able to eat.
Yeah, and neither of them have had to have metal rods put in their spine as well, so they were lucky in that aspect.
I guess another thing about the disease that was really striking is that it progresses. I mean, and doesn't stop being the worst moment ever. It continues to become worse.
Yes, it can plateau though when they sort of reach adulthood and they get to the end of their teens. They can get to a plateau stage where things stay pretty much at a steady age, and if they can reach adulthood, there's a good chance, and there's several of them that have gone into the 30s, 40s, and some slightly further than that as well. They'll always be vulnerable because their immune system is shocking, and they're always very prone to pneumonia. So it's still life shortening because of their immune system. And when you get to the end of the book, you'll see um, when they have the inquest, you'll find out the consequences of that immune system and what effect that had on Livy.
And it's so sudden. That was the thing.
Yes.
That struck me. I mean, one moment we're talking about, I mean, I didn't know where I was in the book. That's the hard part about reading a PDF is you don't really know where you are. And then all of a sudden, the she's gone. I was like, what? No way.
You don't. It does come quite brutally, but that was how it came really with the interviews. I knew, I knew that was going to be a very hard segment. I'd got I'd call it a mobile. I call it a caravan. You'd call it a mobile home in Wales, and I used to go down there, and that's where I did my writing. And I'd have a 2-hour phone call with Sarah, and I'd record it, and then spend a couple of days, well, a bit longer than a couple of days, writing each chapter.
You did a wonderful job capturing her personality. I think the narrator of the story came off very, very well in the writing.
I think it captured her charisma.
Yeah.
She's a very likable, caring person.
It doesn't feel like this is one part of a conversation. I feel like I'm being told the story directly from the mother.
Yeah,
it's
that was my intention.
I did a very good job. I mean, you're a father. I'm a father of daughters. I mean, this would be so devastating to watch your child just kind of fall into this. Just, I mean, you're 1 minute you're a baby, right? I mean, babies are tough. You're crying, you're spitting up, you're throwing up, whatever have you, that babies do that are so hard because, I mean, they're developing, and this child doesn't stop doing that.
No, well, Livy had climbed the stairs in the house. Livy had talked, and she was doing her mama and dada and babbling and, saying sister's name, and she was using her hands with all the tests that 18-month-old do, and she was passing everything with no indication. And it changed one day. One day it was a different, she was a different child. And I don't think I could answer that question because I honestly don't think, hand on heart, I could step up to the mark as well as the examples of Rett parents that I've seen, because they are, quite, I'm in awe of their energy and their focus and the fact that they pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and carry on, not knowing whether their child's going to wake up the next day. That is quite impressive.
Is that what you find most interesting about the syndrome, is how these parents cope with it?
Well, no, it's not just that. I also find on top of that, these same parents and dads who, some of them are no spring chickens, the years are passing on. They're running half marathons. they're walking 100+ miles and chucking themselves out of planes, and they're sacrificing all their birthday presents and all this very intense and constant fundraising to find a cure. And a lot of their friends, colleagues, cousins, parents, neighbours, tennis partners, pals from the pub where they drink, they should be stepping up to the mark and doing some of this on a bit more of a regular basis for them as well. Because those parents are missing out on some of that limited time with their daughters. Because, let's face it, a lot of them aren't going to make it into adulthood. Those years are precious. And, if you know someone that's got a daughter with Rett, let's take up a bit of slack on the rope and go and do an event for them. Dye your hair pink and do it for sponsorship if you don't fancy running a 10K race, or but find a way to get involved, because the more people get involved, the sooner and more impact change will be.
That's the interesting part, isn't it? That we have this herd mentality in terms of stuff like this, is like it affects somebody else and not us.
Absolutely.
You tend not to really, oh, well, that's too bad that you have to go through this. Thank God I don't have to go through that.
Yeah, we're both very fortunate, because to me, I can put my book down, I could go home and see my family, and I don't have to think about it. Whereas, Al and obviously Sarah and Alan and other people, Rett parents I know, every night they're wondering if their daughter's going to wake up. And my friend has Estelle. She can sometimes get very excited and happy in the night, and they wring their hands and have this. When they're excited, it's a bit like Fagin in the Oliver Twist film. If she does that at a certain frequency when she's very, very happy, it sets the alarm off that makes Estelle's parents think she's having an epileptic fit. So they jump out of bed to, go and see her, and she's just actually very happy. And they'll just laugh and say, "Good night, Estelle," and go back to bed and, panic over. And that's just their life. It's just a different world that they live in compared to what the rest of us take for granted.
That's what I was just getting, that they have something happening in their own minds that they could never share. Will never be privy to what's happening up there, and they're happy. I mean, that's what I got from Livy, is that in your story, is that she was amazingly content. She didn't know what living life in any other way than what she was living it.
Yeah, I mean, Livy wasn't really exposed to a lot of the things that we're exposed to in our lives in the same way, and the things that we worry about. Most of us, we sacrifice our health trying to work hard to build a wealth, and then later on we spend that wealth trying to buy back the health that we destroyed doing it. And then most of us are so anxious about our future that we don't really enjoy the present, and because we're not enjoying the present, we don't really live in the future, and we don't really live in the present, and we end up dying not really knowing what it's like to have lived. Well, Livy had none of those preconceptions and worried. She just grabbed life, or grabbed a cookie, or whatever it was, and every moment of fun as it came, and didn't worry about the future. Even when she was diagnosed with Rett Syndrome and the parents were devastated, she was just having hysterics and laughing in the back seat, because for her, the world had not changed at all. She was still living. She was not Rett Syndrome. Rett Syndrome was something that she had. It's not what she was. And she took life in her stride and impressed and won the heart of everyone that she met.
How are the parents doing now? Are you still friends with Al and Sarah?
Al and Sarah, yeah. Just to cover confusion, my friend who's got a daughter called Estelle with Rett Syndrome, he's also called Al. But yeah, Alan and Sarah, yes, we're good friends. We obviously talk with marketing the book. She's done a lot of work as well in newspapers and media as well, with marketing it. Last weekend, we went down to Walsall, Livy's hometown in the West Midlands, and we did a book signing in a hotel, and we went for a meal. We met Brody, and also the little boy that she's adopted. Danielle, who's got extremely complex special needs as well. He's a very
That
very
is
warm guy.
fascinating. So they went through the ordeal. I don't know, it's not a poly ordeal. It's loving somebody enough to do whatever it takes to make sure they're happy. But Livy passes and they voluntarily take somebody else with special needs into their lives. It's not a release. It's not like, I'm free. It's I need this in my life now.
No, well, it was a bit more than that, really, because not only did they take one on first of all, but this one, I can't really give any details about this particular child. It was quite a high profile, but he's protected by care order. The first one that they took on was extremely poorly and passed away as well. They went through a second child death with the first little boy that they looked after. Then they were going to stop. That one really hit the family hard. And Brody, the youngest daughter, called out the mother and said, "No, what sort of legacy would this be for this little boy if, Libby's legacy was that we were going to carry on and give a home and we had space in the home for another child, but if that child died, are we going to stop doing it?" So she was absolutely right. So then they went on, took on two more boys. They took on an 8-year-old who's now 15, nearly 16. Again, I can't say anything about him as well, but his needs are, I would say, right on the 10 out of 10 for complex.
Wow.
And one that Daniel, who I can talk about because he's now adopted, he's got no glands, he's got no growth hormones, he's got cerebral palsy, he has epilepsy, he's chronically diabetic, and he's blind. That's complex medical needs.
Absolutely. Oh gosh.
And he is the happiest little boy you'd ever see. He's constantly laughing and smiling. So they used the skills, and they are skills that they had from looking after Livy, and they've continued to use those to give a great home to other very poorly children.
What a legacy, huh?
It is.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's truly stunning.
That's the uplifting part at the end of the book, really. And then I won't give it all away, but some of the work that she's also done for charities and large groups of other disabled children is incredibly inspiring as well, especially given her own circumstances.
And this is not just one family either, as I think you mentioned already, that this is a community of people that are striving to make each other's lives better.
Yes, the trouble is these families feel they can be a bit isolated. With it being 1 in 12,000, that's about 18 girls a year in the UK, and it's just over 200 in America every year who will learn that they have Rett syndrome. Well, America's a big country, so 200 spread out. The chances of bumping into each other are very slim. Um, you know, but social media does help them interact and get advice, which perhaps you can't always get incredibly quickly from doctors, as very few doctors know about the condition. Can you imagine if you went to the hospital with and you're told that your child had leukemia, and the doctor said, "Oh, I just need to check on Google because I don't really know what leukemia is and see what it is." You wouldn't have a lot of confidence in that doctor, would you? But that's the everyday dilemma that a parent with a child with Rett syndrome that goes to an emergency room faces and witnesses when, because they'll have a secondary condition. And yes, my child's got Rett syndrome, and I'll give you an example of one who dislocated the hip. And what's Rett syndrome? So I go off and Google it to find out what it is. And they don't really get past seeing what the symptoms and prognosis are. And they don't also know how to really, when I say not how to treat, they can treat symptoms as and when they appear, but I don't think they see the bigger picture in knowing how to be around that child They don't realise it's not brain damage. So when they're talking in front of the child can hear everything, even though they can't react. So when you're talking about surgical procedures, some of them are really terrified and frightened. Um, and that is a real problem. And a lot of doctors won't treat secondary conditions. And I've had stories of dislocated hips that hospitals didn't want to do surgery to fix. What's the point? She doesn't walk. And a similar one with broken front teeth that they didn't want to fix. What's the point? She feeds through a straw.
So what are they going to do? Feed? They treat the pain and not the cause of the pain, or are the children not in pain?
They should have the same treatment as every other child, because girls with Rett syndrome know when they look beautiful. They know when they look rough. They feel happy just like any ordinary teenage girl. They want to look in the mirror and feel like they're a princess. And they have exactly the same entitlements to the same treatments as any other human being. And that is one of my real frustrations, and why one of the reasons I did the book was for awareness. I'm hoping, and I have had quite a lot of medical people who have read it. See at the end that there's a paediatrician who's read it and put some nice comments at the end of the book as well. But even she says, over a full career as a paediatrician, the number of girls with Rett syndrome that she came into contact with was very low because it's a rare disease.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking about 1 in 85 girls. 1 in 85.
1 in 12,000.
I was looking at Wikipedia. It says 1 in 85.
No, it's not. It's 1 in 12,000 births of girls. Wikipedia is only as good as what people have typed on.
No, that's true. I mean, but regardless, when you have a Rett syndrome, you're treating the child and you're treating the parents, and you need somebody knowledgeable to do it. And like you just said, I mean, the numbers are so small and spread out that if you do go to your local hospital, the chances are that they're not going to know what you're talking about.
No,
the numbers are so tiny.
That is one of the reasons why I'm taking a lot of the letters and messages to meet my Member of Parliament, the Right Honourable Julian Smith, who's the Tory government's chief whip. And I'm going to ask for a number of things, mainly for some funding, because the 2 Rett syndrome charities in the UK have had zero funding from the government, ever.
Well, that was interesting. Last time we talked, we mentioned that too. How is that possible in the United Kingdom? Don't you have socialized medicine to begin with?
Well, yes, when you go to hospital, the condition, you get treatment. But what I'm saying is the project of researching and finding the cure has had no funding. It's all the research and science has been from charities from the UK. And when you think of the fact of $1 billion spent on other conditions, it's not good that we're sending 13.3 billion overseas in overseas aid. We can give zero money to these girls. It's not fair. The UK government has a spending budget of £814 billion each year. I think these girls are human beings and deserve their own slice, like every other citizen in this country, of money to find that cure. The last 3 governments have all been elected using slogans identical or similar to "every child matters" in their education policies, and yet in healthcare, girls with Rett syndrome and others with rare diseases as well clearly don't matter or don't matter as much. If you've got a common disease, the government will put money into funding the cure. Now, it's 10 years ago now since it was reversed in a laboratory, and yet still no money has been put into getting this onto becoming a cure for humans. Well, I can say that one of the things that makes it a life-shortening condition is the random, for no reason, stopping breathing aspect. These girls can just stop breathing without warning and for no obvious reason. And there are currently clinical trials going on in several locations, including London, for a medication which will stop this being a life-shortening condition for the breathing. It was open for girls 13 and over, but they're just extending it now to 6 and over as well, and those are going really well. And I saw an email which had come from America last week, which was confirming that the gene therapy clinical trials, we're talking a cure here, is going to be started within 12 months. So it's not a pipe dream. It's now actually something that's quite, it's on the horizon. It's a light.
Gene therapy. Wow, that's amazing. I've heard a lot of great things about gene therapy going into the future.
Rett syndrome is something. Basically, there's a gene in the fat protein called the MCP2.
Yeah.
And when a girl is 4 days old, one of the 2 chromosomes switches off and becomes inactive. That happens. That's normal in all females. The problem is the chromosome that stays active has a mutation in it in girls with Rett syndrome, which then goes on to cause all these symptoms. And essentially, there's 4 or 5 different options of gene therapy, but the one which is getting people excited is the option which is we're going to reactivate the chromosome which became inactive when the girls were 4 days old. So it's going to use the chromosome that's not being used. And that's worked in laboratories to take away the symptoms of Rett syndrome.
Can they test for this in genetic testing prior to birth?
I don't believe you can. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I've never read anything to say that you can.
It's interesting. I was wrong. It was 12.5 thousand. That's the number on Wikipedia. I don't know where I saw the 8,500, but I'm also reading that boys can have this too, but they rarely are born. They usually die in utero.
There's a bit of slight confusion in this, and I would hate to get into an argument with any parent of a little boy with Rett syndrome. There's a condition which is because the boys only have a 1 chromosome, and they can have a mutation of that chromosome, where in the girl's mutation they lose a little bit of the chromosome, and essentially in the boy's mutation they gain a little bit. And it's called a MCP2 duplication disorder. And I would hate to argue with anybody because their conditions and their symptoms and their impacts are so similar to what the girls go through. But it does get called Rett syndrome, but I think the paediatricians I've spoken to will call it an MCP2 duplication disorder. But yeah, it's very, very rare in boys. But equally devastating. I don't know where the science is with. I think it's quite a long way behind for finding a cure for that. But
is this something that's going to be your life work going forward, or is this something that how do you think your future and Rett syndrome connect?
One day I'd love to meet a girl who's been cured.
Yeah.
That would be, I think that would be quite special.
I mean, what would we have to do? I mean, would it just be genetic therapies that we have to make the government realize there's a lot of hope in researching genetic treatments for not just Rett syndrome, but a host of other things that are affecting humans?
I think they do need to look at putting money into rare diseases and funding. The Rett syndrome funding for the cure and also for the support has been a disgrace. I don't think the UK is any different to other countries because other countries, which may give some, I don't think also put enough funding into it.
I mean, this country, we don't even have medicine available for poor families or people who are suffering to begin with. And if you want a wheelchair or something, you have to raise the money. I mean, there's rarely the government's going to step forward and give you something. I can't imagine.
Well, we're quite lucky in the UK, but if you're in hospital and you have a treatment, you have symptoms, of course you'll get them treated for free. I'm not talking about that. I'm not about the investing in the science to to push for cure over the finishing line. That's where the government hasn't really stepped in. And
if there was a cure, it would have to start almost immediately at birth, or would it even be able to, the child be able to be born? They have to fix it in utero. I mean, now we're talking about these girls live up until they're 16 years old or something. They can't cure a 16-year-old girl of Rett syndrome, can they?
Yes, that's what you're looking at. No, we don't have to be cured at birth. And a lot of them do live past 16 years. It's not officially a life-shortening disease. It is a disease which has complications which can statistically be life-shortening. But if you don't get the pneumonia, and so long as when you stop breathing, you have people who are going to ensure you're resuscitated, and so long as you don't pick up one of these devastating infections that your immune system can't handle, then girls with Rett syndrome can live into the 40s. I did actually hear of one living into the 50s. There's probably someone will hear this and say even further. But yes, Rett syndrome isn't life-shortening, but some of the side effects of Rett syndrome can make it dangerous, especially I think when they're in the early teens.
No, the hard thing about that is your parents are probably no longer around to help you typically when you've reached your 20s and 30s. I mean, you're on your own or dealing with, I don't know, what would you be dealing with at that particular point? Institutionalization? I mean, you'd be basically just a number in a bed, right?
I think sometimes you have to meet these families to see how wonderful not just parents but the siblings.
The siblings.
Some of us. I mean, my friend Estelle has got 3 older sisters who absolutely worship her, just the same way that Livy had 3 sisters who absolutely worshipped her. They're not going to be neglected or they're not going to miss out anything. Certainly, the families and the messages and the videos and things I've seen from people around the world. One thing a lot of these girls have is special families, and I'm sure there's Living Like Livy is probably one of several hundred inspiring books that could have been written on this subject. There's some real heartwarming stories of hardship that I've had in these emails from other people around the world.
That was another thing that you mentioned that really struck a chord is the children. I mean, they basically do have to live with the realization that they have somebody that needs them in their lives all the time.
What the girls with Rett syndrome?
The siblings. I mean, I was struck by the 3 sisters, and how much the parents had to devote their time to Livy, and how much of, I mean, you have to be exhausted. Every single moment is dedicated to this child that really can't do anything for themselves, really. And you have 3 other children on top of that. I mean, without having really a sense of the relationship, felt like, are they being neglected?
I definitely don't think they were neglected, because Sarah was very conscious to make sure that not only would Livy not miss out on things just because she had Rett syndrome, she was going to enjoy other activities. But the siblings didn't miss out as well. I mean, Eden was still doing her ice skating, and I think the only limitations on their activities would be financial. They had some financial issues which might stop them doing certain clubs and things, but no, she worked very, very, very hard. And again, my friend who's got a daughter with Rett, I don't see the siblings missing out. I think it's quite a conscious thing that they don't want them to. What might happen is when they go to families or parties or events or school events. I think there's been a feeling when you go there as a Rett girl that you're a freak in the corner, and it's not always a comfortable environment. And that is one of the things that Sarah's charity that she set up, Libby's Smile, was to make memory making days at a donkey sanctuary and other places for families who have severely disabled children, not just Rett girls, to go along and have a safe place where nobody's a freak in the corner. And it was for the children and their siblings to have, proper memory making fun days and parties and camping trips and things where that element of feeling isolated or different was taken away. She really has, inspired a lot of people with that work as well as alongside the fostering adoption that she's done.
I mean, it just really strikes me how much thought you've put into this and how much of your soul basically comes out when you discuss it. And I'm curious, I mean, is it just because you've met families like this or because you're the father of a daughter? What do you think has inspired so much empathy towards this disease for you and, motivated you to write this book? Andre?
Can you hear me?
Oh, nope, I lost you. Did you hear my question?
I heard you. Yes, I heard your question perfectly. You asked me what motivated me to do it, and
Yeah, I mean, you wrote a book. It just feels like your
I have.
empathy for these families and these children is astounding. And where does that come from? I mean, do you feel it for other things too? Because, I mean, I really find it special that you found an 88-year-old man in desperate need of help and you gave it to him. I mean, there's something really special about your heart that you're able to not step over that man and you're not able to overlook what these families are going through. And I mean, where does that come from?
Well, I think if I hadn't gone and helped him, Mrs. Govier would have been shouting at me and calling me something. Anyway, because she's very much a heart of gold, and it was her that spotted him when he tumbled. Um, I was really sort of taken back by my friend Al Estelle's dad, and he has a wife who's also totally deaf, so he has that aspect to deal with as well. Having a wife with a disability and having a daughter with Rett. And the fact he just inspires me that he just takes it all in stride. I've never seen him anything but cheerful, never complains, never moans. And he's a sort of good role model to sort of try and keep yourself, away from being pessimistic and feeling sorry for yourself and, doing something a bit more useful. I mean, I did like writing my other books and I thought they were quite, they had a purpose. Probably quite selfishly, I wanted my youngest daughter to get into good reading habits, and they achieved what I wanted them to do, and for other people as well. But this was a bit more important for me.
Are you done with fiction? Are you going to continue on writing these accounts of families struggling with genetic diseases?
No, I'm not going to write one of these again. It was very hard 12 months writing someone else's story. I might write to raise money for those, but I think I'm going to stick to fiction.
When is your next fiction book coming out?
I haven't started writing it yet. I've got another little project for old people and dementia, which I'm thinking of doing in between. But that's still very much under wraps.
So, I mean, it's basically people who can't fight for themselves that you feel most empathetic for.
Um, perhaps. I do feel that it's almost corrupt and it's neglect. If you look at the definition of neglect, and history will judge us on how we treat the most vulnerable in our society.
Oh, yeah, right.
The
It's
decision
such a
makers.
great quote. It's such a great quote. History will judge us for how we treat the most vulnerable. And now it seems like we're stepping over them and trying to ignore them. I mean, I was just in the city today and there were so many homeless people and they're just being ignored. They have signs out, whatever the reason that they're on the streets, but still they're vulnerable, right? They have nothing. I'm sure that's not the way they want to live their lives. And it
Absolutely.
looks bad on all of us. I mean, when there's somebody who's struggling to find anything, just
I mean,
basic.
I would like to prick the conscience of the decision makers into doing something correct, for the right reason. And if I can put that argument across and point out the fact that I'm not asking for billions. I'm asking for a few million.
And you're asking for fairness, right? I mean, it's not
absolutely.
about corporations.
I
It's
want
about
their
people.
slice. And to put some scale on it, the UK government will say that we've got a financial problem at the moment. We've got a debt of 1.7 trillion. Whatever that, it doesn't sound a lot. We say it quickly, but unfortunately, because of that, we're paying 50 billion a year in interest, which is a bit too much in interest. And that might be one of the excuses they use for this carte blanche austerity. However, it doesn't stop them giving themselves a nice whacking with pay rise in Parliament every year. But if I was to go back to the end of the Second World War, well, that 1.7 trillion actually is 87% of our GDP for our nation, which might sound a bit eye-watering, but at the end of the Second World War, our debt was 260% of our GDP, and that didn't stop the Prime Minister then getting the NHS set up, did it? Debt was proportionally triple what it is now, and we still established a health service, a free health service then.
So is the health service in England in jeopardy at all? It's not, right? It's pretty much cemented in.
It's stretched. It is stretched. It will always be stretched. But I mean, it's more than the health service. One of the things that I would like to do is educate doctors about rare diseases, including Rett. Nobody should ever turn up with a child at hospital, say they've got Rett syndrome, and witness medical staff Googling it. That's just not acceptable. And one of the things that is being rolled out with the charity Reverse Rett is to produce little passports, Rett syndrome passports, which will tell medical personnel exactly what Rett is with reliable facts rather than Googling it, and exactly how it affects that child, because it affects different children differently, and also what that child likes, because some children want to hear what treatment is being proposed and done. Some of them, it will terrify them. Some of them have likes and dislikes and ways to be spoken. They don't want to be plonked on a table and talked about the same way that a dog is at the vet, as if they're not in the room and can't understand, because they haven't got brain damage. They understand what's being said, but sometimes it's literally like when you take your pet to the vet and they're talking about them as if they're an animal.
I mean, as far as I'm looking at Britain's doctor to patient ratio, I'm not sure if this is accurate or not, but it's 2.71 doctors per 1,000 people. For them, I would imagine you walk into a room with a person who has whatever, it's just a number, how to throw drugs at them, how to get them out of there so you can help the next person so you can eventually go home and eat your dinner or whatever. How exhausting would that be? 2.7 doctors per 1,000 people.
It's not a lot, is it?
It's a lot, right? To me,
it's a lot of people.
It's not a lot of doctors. It's not a lot of doctors.
No, it's not. And I think, they need to bring the training up to date as well. Now the science is looking at ways of medicating and improving the lives of kids who've got Rett. They need to improve the recognition as well. The recognition and the understanding and the inclusion. We are very inclusive. We have a nation who continuously beaten and educated discrimination out of all walks of life and try to bring fairness into society with slogans like every child matters. And that needs to roll across from the education sector into the health sector. And, if we're going to spend time researching motor neuron disease and breast cancer and leukemia, then we need to also research this. It is big enough and it's real. And if they were to spend a week in the company of a family who've got a girl with Rett syndrome, I think they'd realise it's worth doing. We can change a girl and give her a life back. You can't really put a price on that.
Yeah, and the sad thing though is it doesn't matter to you until it does matter to you. Because until you met somebody who was struggling with a loved one with Rett, wasn't on the radar, right?
It's something in a book. It's something in a booklet you can close.
What do you mean?
Well, to everybody else who's never come across it, it's something that can on a Google page or in a book that you can close. But
if you even come across it, right? I mean, because there's no reason for you to look it up. I mean, unless it actually affects you. I mean, it amazes me that every single person that came in contact with Livy developed an interest in the syndrome because of her reaction with them.
Yeah.
She influenced the education of doctors and families and people that go far beyond her. How old was she when she passed? 12? 9. 9-year-old. 9 years old, and the legacy that she left behind is intense.
Do you know several hundred people have also read the book and become equally motivated 9 years after she's passed? That's quite a legacy. And I'm hoping this book will change things. I'm going to give a copy of it to the Chief Whip of Government when I go to see him. I've got a signed copy. I'm going to ask him to read it. And he's actually quite a good egg. For a politician, he's actually really good. I've had one previous encounter with him where he really took me back by what a compassionate and understanding listening person he was, which is not something you say about a politician very often.
If you're not careful, you're going to end up being called a politician one day yourself, I think.
No. I'm quite optimistic that I will not come away empty-handed. I'll say that much.
When you meet with
when I go to meet the MP on the 17th of March, simply because I think he's the sort of person who listens to his electorate and will do what he can. And if he can't, I'll try and get a representation in front of the decision maker who can. And I'm also going to petition for the other Rett charity, to mention Rett UK. They're the ones who provide support for families who've got a newly diagnosed child with Rett, provide a lot of the information and also funding for some of the specialist equipment, eye gazers or meetings and support groups. Equally important work, really, because it's a terrifying thing for families to have to organise themselves. Life suddenly just turned upside down when you've got a child with that.
What I think is most amazing about your work in this book is that it does kind of give somebody a roadmap towards what to expect with a daughter with the syndrome. I mean, if a person, you went into a hospital and said, well, your kid's got Rett, read this. I mean, you've basically laid it out for them so they understand what happens. I mean, what is your plan with the book itself? Lay that out for me.
I'm going to promote it as hard and as wide and as fast as I can till the end of May. And I'd like to try and build up as many reviews and expanded distribution at the moment. With it, I am getting expanded distribution, but I don't know which shops that is. Seeing from my Create Space, I haven't really worked out how to tell which shops that relates to yet. But obviously, I'd like to sell as many as possible and establish it so it's a continuous source of income for the reverse Rett, forever and a day. I like to think I've planted a seed and it's going to grow into a big tree. Reverse Rett is a UK partner with the American sister charity, which is the Rett Syndrome Research Trust. There's partner companies or charities all around the world which effectively all work together for the same thing, but it's branded differently in the language and name of the country where that charity's headquarters are. But it's all part of the same cause, kicking in the same direction.
Well, you've got 38 reviews on Amazon right now. That seems to be a pretty good start, right?
That's a good month.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Is it Livy on the cover here, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow, she was a pretty little girl.
You know the football player Steven Gerrard, who's
You mentioned him in the book. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's the shirt. That's his number 4 shirt that she's wearing in that picture. That she wanted so much, and she refused to take off. And I've watched. She thought she looked the bee's knees in that
shirt. Devastating. Well, I mean, I wish you all the luck in the world. I think you're on to something here. That, I mean, was there anybody that had done what you've done already and taken the oral history of a family with a family member suffering with Rett syndrome?
The ones that I've seen seem to have been written by the parents of similar things. I don't know whether there's one which goes into quite so much brutal, harrowing detail, especially in the events of chapter 6. I've looked at another condition where someone has written a book, another book called The Headbanger's Ball, which was a girl who had an awful lot of seizures and another disability. And I had some ideas of it. I didn't particularly like the way that one was written, but it did give me some good ideas as well. I was very careful. I wanted to capture Sarah's natural charisma and sort of leadership and strength, in a terrible situation of adversity. And I think looking at how other books had done this perhaps not so well, or and done it well, was a good steer on that. But I would like it to be, not just a 6-month wonder. I would like it to be still selling well in, 10, 20 years.
Have you thought about novelizing it?
What do you mean, making it expanding?
Well, expanding it, turning the family into characters, doing scenes, breaking it down into an outline, kind of just like, instead of having the narrator be Sarah telling the reader the story, kind of slowing it down a little bit.
See, I think I do like the appeal that it can be read in one sitting. I do like the appeal that the level of English makes it open to more people. I do like easy reading, and for people to not feel intimidated by it. I'm doing my audio book.
I know, that's fantastic. And you were telling me that you had already picked out an actress, or you're auditioning actresses?
No. The closing date is the 2nd of May. I've had several who are very good. I did send you one.
You did.
Did you have a listen to her?
I did not, unfortunately, have the opportunity. But I mean, after reading the story today, I realized how well it would play being read.
Yes, it's written so that it would make a very good audiobook. And the actress that on that example that I've sent, she really does nail it very, very well. And you've read far enough now, so I know it won't be a spoiler for you. But yeah, you listen to it, it's very impressive. But I'm keeping it going until the 1st of May. I don't want to actually pick somebody, because at the end of the day, I'm wanting to raise awareness, and having an advert out for an actress does raise a lot more awareness, because I've had about 5,000 people have asked me for copies of the script. So that's 5,000 people repeatedly reading the blurb and the script from within and practicing, and that's 5,000 more people that will know about Rett syndrome. And then when I do my shortlist, I'm going to make a video of my top 10 and play that on my Facebook wall. And the people who follow my Facebook page, my author page, will get to hear them and vote in a poll to pick the person who's going to be the voice of my audiobook. And again, that'll make more awareness.
already out, right? You've already released this to the public. This isn't like on its way to being released. It's already out there.
Oh,
It's
the book's out. The audio book will start to be produced on the 1st of May.
Yeah, man, 38 reviews and they're verified purchasers. This is really looking like it's going to be a solid success for Rett syndrome
I
research.
hope so. I hope
Yeah.
so. I hope so.
Yeah,
There's a
and I'm
lot of
looking forward to looking or reading your next dementia book. I mean, what you've done here is interesting, and I'd like to see you continue it as well. I mean, you're like a superhero for people who can't fight for themselves, and it's truly impressive.
well, I'd just like it to make a whole heap of cash and make a proper good contribution towards funding that cure a bit sooner. You know,
Yeah.
that's the motive really. And if a few doctors can become aware of it and spot those symptoms and not misdiagnose with cerebral palsy or global learning difficulty or some other thing, then that's great because families who go through 2 years of being given a misdiagnosis, that is, I just couldn't imagine that. I really couldn't imagine anything more frustrating and frightening and worrying. And you think you've got to question your own sanity when that's happening to you. And Sarah actually, she explains that the diagnosis was in some ways a relief. She
I
realised
understood it as like it
she
was,
wasn't going crazy.
yeah.
She wasn't going crazy. She'd found a doctor who actually believed her.
Well, she
Um,
didn't want it to be Rett either, though. At the same time, I mean, she
yeah,
saw the 9 out of 10 symptoms, and she was like, "No, it's not this. It's not this. It's not this." I mean, she was kind of in denial, which I think any rational person would be in that
yeah.
circumstance. They don't want their child to have this horrible syndrome that there's really very little that can be done.
When we first started talking about it, and she explained how it was sort of not a very structured conversation. She was explaining when she was googling herself the symptoms, and she found Rett syndrome. And her initial response was, "I don't want that one."
Yeah.
That was nearly the name we gave to the book. First of all, I don't want that one. But I'm glad we didn't because living like Livy really summed up what sort of little girl she was, and people might have looked at that and thought it meant I didn't want Livy, which of course certainly wasn't the case. Um, yeah, she was very, very much wanted. And
What I mean, I end the podcast with the same 3 questions, and just to change up the first one a little bit. I mean, what would you say to somebody who has a hard time seeing people the way that you see people? I mean, how would you advise them to see humanity in a more clear way, less
I think
selfish, if you know
I
what I'm
think
asking?
sometimes you've got to look at your own problems and your own phone bill, your own bald tire that needs fixing on your car, your own being 10 minutes late to work, and realise really this is trivial. You know, some people are just grateful to wake up breathing each day. You know, and actually, I met the author Andy McNabb in the author of Bradford to Zero, one of the top UK authors last October, and he was saying when he was going through his very darkest moments in the First Gulf War, his motto was always "If I'm breathing, I'm winning." And really, when you look at how tough these girls are, and the parents as well, emotionally, what they go through, really, what issues that most of us face each day are completely trivial. Um, on the scale of things, most of those little problems that people get down and get upset and have domestic arguments with their other half and bellow at the kids for are pretty trivial. And I'm not perfect, but I'd like to think that I'd at least consider, shelving some of those issues and having a bit of perspective.
Well, I don't know where it comes from, man, but you seem to be very aware of what's happening around you and sympathetic towards it. And I think a lot of our society would do well to have more people able to do that in it. And I don't know where that superpower comes from, but no, it's appreciated, and I think it should be, more evident in our world, less
Well,
selfish, I guess, in a way. I mean, you're not blind to people's pain, and you're not blind to people being victimized through either oversight or, I don't know.
It's actually a nice rewarding thing to give something. I've had more pleasure out of this book than all my other books.
It's interesting, and I remember talking to you last year, and you said that you wanted to write this by the end of the summertime too. So I mean, we stretched a little bit beyond that, and I mean, it doesn't sound like it was easy to write.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't easy, and also because Sarah's home situation and having Danielle and one other very complex needs child as well. Getting those conversations in wasn't very easy because we're not like a 10-minute talk. She needs to get a couple of hours when she won't be interrupted, and she has her own health issues as well. And I have my own job where I work shifts. I work nights, lates, and earlies. So getting a crossover when I was available and when Sarah was, sometimes that might take a month. So there was issues, and also then especially chapter 6. That was a very hard chapter to write, and then it was finished. I finished writing it in October, and then the various levels of proofreading that I needed to do as well at the end. I had 2 UK proofreaders who did it after myself. I want to thank them actually. One was my eldest daughter Hannah, who did my LIGO books, and then my dad's partner Vivian, who's a real grammar anorak. She went through it with a real fine tooth comb, and there was a Romanian author called Nico, who I believe you're speaking to in the near future.
I think this weekend.
She went through it, and she had a lot of good ideas as well, and pointed out as well some of my mistakes and sentence structure things, and that you could change the order of as well. Then I had 2 paediatricians who gone through it, and the charity went through as well. Andy and Rachel Stevenson, who run the Reverse Rett charity, they went through as well, looking for factual correctness. And I had a lovely lady in America called Linda, who is I don't know if grammar anorak really covers it, but she certainly knows her language very well, because there's so many words in our language which don't mean the same thing in US English, and she helped me make it bilingual by changing some words so that I know that Americans would understand it, but I wanted it to be easy read over there as well. Certain words that we have which mean something totally different, such as rubbish bin, doesn't mean the same thing in certain areas of America. They'd say that was a poor quality plastic container. Instead, we use trash can, and we say pushchair and you say stroller. So I needed to iron out all those sort of things, and Linda was really very helpful. And of course, a massive thank you to Chris Hunter, who's probably the busiest person I know. For him to take the time out and to write that forward was really flattering.
Yeah, right.
That was very nice, and it was a nice touch as well for Sarah, because Sarah's a massive fan of Chris Hunter's books, so she was really pleased with that as well.
So what's next for you?
I'm going to carry on promoting this one. I'm going to do the audio book, and then I have got something which is more for old people in line, which I'm planning to write, and I have still got 2 fiction books in my LIGO series that I do plan to write as well. That I've got penciled out, but they need writing.
Get some light down.
Apart from that, and working full time, not much really.
Sounds like a lot's on your plate. And my second question is always, what are you reading? What's on your night table? What's in your Kindle right now? Or anything fun or anything you'd like people to be aware of?
I've got a book in my Kindle. I can't remember the name of it now. I should know the name, but I've not started reading it. I only downloaded it 2 days ago. But it's a growing up, coming of age falling out with people. But one book I would like to recommend that I read a couple of weeks ago is The Girl with Seven Names. It's about a girl who grew up in North Korea, and it really nails how crazy life is in North Korea. Even in the first chapter, where the house is on fire and her dad nearly dies, rushing in to save the pictures of the two Kims on the wall. Because if he hadn't rescued those pictures from the house fire, then the family's life wouldn't have been worth living. They were more valuable, really, than saving the kids. But that is a really good book about a girl who managed to escape from North Korea and the struggle she had in China in order to get to safety. It took her 14 years, and she had to change her name 7 times. But that's a very, very good book. And she's now living in America, this that girl. But it's not only a very good book, but I love the way that it's written. Because for ourselves, reading the names in Korean would be quite difficult to follow. I find sometimes names that are hard to pronounce are hard to remember. But the way that the author, she's written her own story in that book, she's made it very easy because she's given people nicknames like Aunt Pretty and Uncle Drug Dealer and things like that. And she's made the characters very easy to remember. I definitely recommend that one because anyone that's thinking they're having a bad day would certainly realise it's not that bad. So I read that book, The Girl with Seven Names.
Living in North Korea or trying to escape from North Korea, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where can we find you on the World Wide Web?
I've got an author page on Twitter, Andre Govier, and I am also it's on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter at Andre Govier, and obviously on Facebook. I do get a lot of emails and messages, and I do try and reply to every single one. I definitely read everyone.
Perfect. And I thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about Livy and writing the story, and it's good stuff. It's good work.
Well, thank you for having me.